The text arrived at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, right as I was debugging a server crash that had half our company's clients screaming into their phones. My wife Ember's name flashed across my phone screen, and for a split second, I thought she might be calling to remind me about dinner plans or ask me to pick up groceries. Instead, I got this. Don't come to my birthday. My friends don't want to see you. I stared at the message for a full 30 seconds, watching the cursor blink on my computer screen while the server logs scrolled past in angry red text. Around me, the IT department buzzed with the usual chaos of crisis management, but everything felt suddenly muted, like someone had wrapped my head in cotton. My name is Kellor Beck, and I've been married to Ember for 8 years. I fix computers for a living at a mid-sized tech firm downtown, the kind of place where everyone drinks too much coffee and pretends the company pizza parties make up for the mediocre pay. Ember works at a digital marketing agency across town, climbing ladders I never even knew existed, schmoozing with clients who wear suits that cost more than my monthly salary. I read her message again, then again. My friends don't want to see you. Not, we need to talk, or I'm having a rough day. Not even, you're not invited. Just a flat declaration that I'd become persona non grata in my own marriage. Mike Chen rolled his chair over from the next cubicle, squinting at my screen. Dude, you look like someone just told you Christmas got canceled. What's wrong? Nothing, I said, sliding my phone into my pocket. Just Ember being Ember. But that wasn't true, and we both knew it. Ember had always been ambitious, always focused on her career and her image, but she'd never been cruel. Dismissive, maybe. Impatient with my lack of social climbing skills, definitely. But not cruel. This felt different. This felt like a door slamming shut. I spent the rest of the afternoon pretending to work while my brain churned through the implications. Ember's birthday was this Saturday. We'd been planning it for weeks, or rather, she'd been planning it while I nodded along and offered to help with whatever she needed. The venue, the guest list, the catering, all arranged through our joint accounts, all paid for with money we'd both earned. Money I'd earned mostly, since my salary as a senior systems administrator was considerably more stable than her commission-based income at the agency. By 6 o'clock, I'd made my decision. I drove home through the usual downtown traffic, past the gentrified blocks where young professionals pretended the city's Rust Belt past had never existed. Our house sat in one of those transitional neighborhoods, the kind where old factory workers' homes got bought up by couples like us who couldn't quite afford the trendy areas but wanted to feel like we were moving up in the world. Ember's car wasn't in the driveway. It hadn't been in the driveway much lately, now that I thought about it. Inside, the house felt hollow. Not just empty, hollow. Like something essential had been carved out of it, leaving behind only the furniture and the mortgage payments. I grabbed a beer from the refrigerator and sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop. The banking app loaded with the familiar blue and white interface I'd been staring at for years. Joint checking account, joint savings, joint credit cards, all the financial entanglements that marriage creates, all the shared responsibilities that bind two lives together. I started with the transaction history. $300 to Rossetti's Event Center, $150 for catering deposits, $75 for a rideshare account that had been charging us monthly fees I'd never noticed before. Another $200 for what looked like party supplies and decorations. All of it authorized through our joint accounts. All of it for a party I was explicitly not invited to attend. I opened a new browser tab and started the process of opening a new checking account in my name only. The application took 15 minutes to complete, another 10 minutes to set up the direct deposit transfer from my employer. 20 minutes after that, I was downloading transaction histories and exporting 8 years of financial records. The joint accounts had to be closed by mutual agreement or by removing all funds and canceling automatic payments. I chose the latter option. Transfer initiated, automatic payments canceled, linked payment tokens revoked. My phone buzzed with a text from Ember. Running late tonight. Don't wait up. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a new document on my laptop and started building what I would later think of as the ledger of our marriage. Every shared expense, every joint purchase, every financial decision we'd made together, line item by line item, dollar by dollar. It took me 3 hours to compile everything. By the time I finished, I had a comprehensive record of exactly how much money had gone toward Ember's career advancement, her social life, her image maintenance, and how little of it had come from her own income. The numbers were illuminating. Over the past 2 years, as her agency work had become more demanding and her social circle had expanded, I'd essentially been funding a lifestyle that no longer included me. The expensive dinners with clients that I never met, the weekend trips to conferences that seemed to happen every month, the gym membership at that upscale place downtown where all the young professionals went to network. I was paying for my own exclusion from my wife's life. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Is this Kellor Beck? The voice was female, young, slightly drunk. Yes. This is Lana from Ember's work. Listen, I think you should know that your wife is... The line went quiet. I could hear party sounds in the background, laughter and music. Hello? Never mind, Lana said quickly. I shouldn't have called. She hung up. I sat in the quiet kitchen, staring at my laptop screen and the neat rows of financial data that told the story of a marriage falling apart in real time. Outside, Mrs. Carmody was walking her ancient poodle past our front window, probably hoping to catch a glimpse of whatever domestic drama she'd been sensing for weeks. My phone buzzed with another text from Ember. Staying at Lana's tonight. See you tomorrow. I looked at the timestamp. 11:43 p.m. I closed my laptop and went to bed alone, but I didn't sleep. Instead, I lay in the dark and listened to the house settle around me, thinking about birthday parties and joint bank accounts and the strange mathematics of betrayal. Tomorrow, I decided, would be a very different kind of day. I woke up at dawn with the kind of clarity that only comes after a night of staring at the ceiling and accepting that your life has just taken a hard left turn into unknown territory. Ember still wasn't home. Her side of the bed looked like it hadn't been slept in, which meant either she'd actually stayed at Lana's or she'd gotten very good at covering her tracks. The banking app on my phone showed the transfers had completed overnight. Our joint checking account now held exactly $17.32. Enough to keep it technically open, but not enough to cover a cup of coffee at one of those places Ember liked to frequent with her work friends. I made myself breakfast and checked my email. 3 automated messages from various services letting me know that scheduled payments had failed and accounts were being suspended. The party venue, the catering company, even the florist Ember had hired to create centerpieces that I would never see. My phone rang at 8:15 a.m. Ember's name flashed across the screen. What did you do? She said without preamble. Her voice had that sharp edge it got when she was trying to maintain control while everything fell apart around her. Good morning to you too, I said, settling back in my chair with my coffee. Sleep well at Lana's? Kellor, I'm serious. The venue called me this morning. They're saying our payment was declined, and if we don't cover the balance by noon, they're canceling the reservation. Interesting, I said. What payment would that be? Don't play games with me. You know exactly what payment. My birthday party is tomorrow night, and you're sabotaging it because you're having some kind of tantrum. I took a sip of coffee and watched Mrs. Carmody through the kitchen window. She was pruning her roses with the focused intensity of someone who was definitely eavesdropping on my phone conversation. I'm not sabotaging anything, I said. I just took your advice. What advice? You said your friends don't want to see me, so I figured you probably don't want to use my money either. Seemed like the considerate thing to do. The silence on the other end of the line stretched long enough for me to count 3 cars passing by outside. You closed our accounts, she said finally. I moved my money to an account that doesn't fund parties I'm not invited to. Your money is still wherever you keep it. My money? Her voice pitched higher. Kellor, we're married. It's our money. Funny how it's our money when you need it and my friends when you don't. Another silence. Then, we need to talk about this in person. I'm at home, I said. You know, the place you didn't come back to last night. She hung up. I finished my coffee and headed to work, leaving my phone on silent. The office felt different somehow, like I was seeing it through new eyes. Mike was already at his desk, wrestling with the same server issues that had been plaguing us all week. You look better today, he said when I sat down. Less like someone ran over your dog. I don't have a dog. You know what I mean. What's the story with Ember? I considered how much to tell him. Mike was a good friend, but he was also the kind of guy who meant well and gave terrible advice. The last thing I needed was someone trying to talk me into couples counseling or suggesting I buy flowers and apologize for whatever I'd supposedly done wrong. She's having a birthday party, I said. I'm not invited. Mike's eyebrows shot up. She uninvited you to her own birthday party? Technically, she never invited me in the first place. Dude, that's harsh. What did you do? That's the thing, I said, logging into my workstation. I have no idea. But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't entirely true. I'd been replaying the last few months in my head, looking for clues I'd missed, and the pattern was becoming clear. Ember had been pulling away gradually, creating distance between us one small decision at a time. Working late more often, spending weekends at work events I wasn't invited to, talking less about her day and asking fewer questions about mine. I'd attributed it to stress, to the demands of her job, to the normal ebb and flow of a long marriage. But now I wondered if I'd been willfully blind to something more deliberate. My phone buzzed with a text, not from Ember this time, but from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Lana from last night. Can we talk? There are things you should know." I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Whatever game was being played here, I wasn't ready to trust anyone in Ember's orbit. Not yet. The morning passed quietly. I fixed a database corruption issue, updated some security protocols, and pretended to care about the quarterly budget meeting that would determine whether our department got new equipment or had to keep nursing along computers that belonged in a museum. At lunch, I drove past Ember's office building. Her car was in the parking lot, parked next to a black pickup truck I didn't recognize. Through the large windows of the marketing agency, I could see people moving around, probably preparing for whatever presentation or client meeting was consuming their afternoon. I didn't stop. I just drove past and kept going, out toward the edge of town where the old factories used to be, where you could still see the bones of what this city used to be before the economy shifted and left half the population scrambling for new ways to make a living. My phone rang as I was heading back to the office. Ember again. "The catering company wants payment by 5 o'clock, or they're canceling too," she said without preamble. "That's unfortunate. Kellor, please, can we just put whatever this is aside for one day? I've been planning this party for weeks. My boss is coming and some really important clients. If this falls through, it's going to reflect badly on me at work." "Sounds like a problem that money could solve," I said. "I don't have access to that kind of money right now. You know that. I know that you have a job and a paycheck and presumably some way of managing your own finances. My paycheck barely covers my car payment and student loans. The party expenses were always going to come from our joint account. The joint account that funds a social life I'm not part of." "This is ridiculous," she said, and now her voice was getting that brittle quality it took on when she was about to say something she couldn't take back. "You're acting like a child." "I'm acting like someone who just learned that his wife's friends don't want him around. I'm curious about that, actually. What exactly did you tell them about me?" Silence. "Ember?" "I have to go," she said. "We'll talk about this tonight." But I had a feeling we wouldn't. Ember's car was in the driveway when I got home from work, but she wasn't alone. Through the front window, I could see her pacing around the living room while someone else sat on our couch. As I got closer, I recognized Lana, a blonde woman in her early 30s who worked with Ember and had always struck me as the type who thrived on other people's drama. I walked through the front door to find them both staring at me like I'd just interrupted a war council. "Kellor," Ember said, standing up straighter. "We need to talk." "Hi, Lana," I said, ignoring my wife for the moment. "Interesting that you're here, considering you called me last night." Lana's face flushed red. "I was drunk. I shouldn't have." "Shouldn't have what?" Ember's head snapped toward her friend. "What call?" The look that passed between them told me everything I needed to know. Lana wasn't just a friend offering moral support. She was someone with inside information, someone who knew exactly why I'd been uninvited for my own wife's birthday party. "Maybe I should go," Lana said, already reaching for her purse. "Maybe you should," I agreed. "But first, why don't you finish what you started to tell me last night?" "Kellor, stop," Ember said sharply. "This isn't helping anything." "On the contrary, I think it might help a lot. Lana was about to tell me something about you before she got cut off. Something she thought I should know." Lana looked between us like a tennis spectator, clearly regretting whatever impulse had brought her into this mess. "I really should go." "Stay," Ember said quickly. "Kellor, can we please just focus on the immediate problem? My party is tomorrow night, and—" "Your party is canceled," I said flatly. "The venue canceled when the payment didn't go through. The catering company canceled when their payment didn't go through. I'm guessing the florist and whoever else you hired have probably canceled too. You did this on purpose." "I did this because my wife sent me a text message telling me I wasn't welcome at her birthday party because her friends don't want to see me, so I made sure her friends wouldn't have to worry about my money being there either." Lana cleared her throat. "Maybe if you two just talked about..." "About what?" I turned to face her directly. "About why my wife's friends suddenly find me so objectionable. About why she's been staying out all night. About why you felt the need to call me drunk and tell me there were things I should know." The silence in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. The air felt pressurized, like a storm trapped indoors. Every breath heavy and deliberate. Ember was staring at Lana with a look that could have melted steel, her jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching. Lana, for her part, was staring at the floor, her shoulders drawn inward, eyes fixed on some invisible point like she wished it would open up and swallow her whole. "I think," Lana said carefully, each word placed as if it might trigger an explosion, "that you two need to have this conversation without me." She grabbed her purse, fingers fumbling slightly with the strap, and headed for the door. The click of her heels against the hardwood sounded too loud in the strained quiet, but I wasn't ready to let her go, not with the unease coiling tighter in my chest. "Lana," I called after her. "That thing you were going to tell me. Does it have anything to do with why Ember's been working so much overtime lately?" She froze, her hand hovering just short of the doorknob, shoulders going rigid like she'd been caught in a spotlight. "Or maybe it has something to do with that gym membership she got a few months ago," I pressed. "The one at that fancy place downtown?" "Kellor, enough," Ember said, her voice sharp, a warning shot meant to stop me. "Or maybe," I continued, the words coming easier now that I'd started, "it has something to do with whoever owns that black pickup truck that's been parked next to your car at work." Lana's shoulders sagged, the tension draining out of her all at once. She turned around slowly, and when she looked at Ember, there was something in her expression that might have been pity or maybe resignation. "I told you this was going to blow up," she said quietly. And there it was, the confirmation I'd been dreading and expecting in equal measure, settling into place with a sickening finality. "Get out," Ember said to Lana, her voice quiet, the kind of calm that comes just before something breaks. "Ember, get out!" Lana didn't argue. She slipped out without another word, closing the door softly behind her, the muted click sounding like punctuation at the end of a sentence no one wanted to finish. Ember and I stood in our living room, 8 years of marriage hanging in the balance between us, and for a moment neither of us said anything. The familiar space felt chewed, as if the walls themselves were listening. "So," I said finally, "the black pickup truck? It's not what you think. I haven't told you what I think yet." She let out a shaky breath and sat down heavily on the couch, the cushions sinking under her weight. Up close, she suddenly looked older than her 42 years, the lines around her eyes deeper, her posture defeated. "His name is Dom," she said. "He's a trainer at the gym." A trainer. It started out as just fitness coaching. I wanted to get in better shape, and he was recommended by someone at work. Her voice was flat, rehearsed, like she'd told herself this version many times. "And now?" She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands clasped in her lap, thumbs rubbing together until the skin went pale. When she finally looked up at me, her eyes were red but dry, the tears already spent. "Now it's complicated." I laughed, and the sound surprised both of us, harsh and brittle in the quiet room. "Complicated, that's one way to put it. Kellor, please, I never meant for this to happen." "But it did happen," I said, "and instead of talking to me about it, you decided to uninvite me from your birthday party so you could celebrate with your trainer and your friends, who apparently all know about this, except me. They don't all know, but some of them do. Enough of them that they don't want to be around me. Because what? They're afraid I'll figure it out? They're embarrassed for me? They think I'm pathetic?" "No one thinks you're pathetic." "Right," I said. "They just think I'm too stupid to notice that my wife is having an affair." The word hung in the air between us like a physical thing. Ember flinched when I said it, her shoulders tightening, but she didn't deny it. "How long?" I asked. 2 months, maybe 3. "Maybe 3. You're not sure?" She swallowed, looking away again. "It wasn't like we planned it. It just happened." I nodded slowly, processing this information with the same methodical approach I used to debug code. Problem identified. Now I needed to understand the scope and determine the appropriate response. "The late nights at work," I said. "The conference trips, the staying at Lana's house. Some of those were real. But not all of them. No, not all of them." I walked over to the window and looked out at our neighborhood. Mrs. Carmody was walking her dog again, probably hoping for another glimpse of whatever drama was unfolding in the Beck household. I wondered if she'd seen Dom's truck in our driveway, if she'd watched my wife sneak around like a teenager and kept track of the details I'd been too trusting to notice. "The birthday party," I said without turning around. "Was he going to be there?" "Yes." "As your trainer or as your boyfriend?" "I don't know. We hadn't decided." I turned back to face her. "You hadn't decided whether to introduce your affair partner to your work friends at a party paid for with my money." "When you put it like that, how else would you put it?" She didn't have an answer for that. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I went to the kitchen and got my laptop, then sat down at the table and opened the financial records I'd compiled the night before. Ember watched me from the living room, probably wondering what I was doing, probably hoping I was about to do something predictable like demand couples counseling or threaten to call a lawyer. Instead, I started documenting everything. The timeline of her behavior changes, the financial irregularities I'd overlooked, the nights she'd claimed to be working late or staying with friends, the mysterious charges to restaurants I'd never been to and services I'd never used. "What are you doing?" she asked finally. "Building a case," I said without looking up. "A case for what?" I saved the document and closed my laptop, then looked at her directly for the first time since she'd confessed. "You uninvited me from your birthday party because your friends don't want to see me," I said, "so I'm going to make sure that's the last party you throw with my money." "Kellor, we can work through this. People have affairs. It doesn't mean the marriage is over." "You're right," I said. "Affairs don't end marriages. But lies do, and disrespect does. And treating your husband like he's too stupid to notice that his life is falling apart around him definitely does." I stood up and headed toward the stairs. "Where are you going?" "To pack some things. I'm staying at Mike's tonight." "You don't have to leave. We can talk about this." I stopped at the bottom of the stairs and looked back at her. "Ember," I said, "yesterday I thought I had a wife who was stressed about work and maybe taking me for granted. Today I found out I have a wife who's been lying to me for months and is so ashamed of me that she can't bear to have me around her friends. There's nothing to talk about." "So what happens now?" "Now you get what you wanted. A life without me in it." I went upstairs and packed a bag, listening to her move around the house below me, probably calling Lana or Dom or whoever else was part of the story I'd been excluded from. When I came back downstairs, she was standing by the front door like she wanted to stop me from leaving. "This doesn't have to be the end," she said. "You're right," I said, walking past her toward my car. "This is just the beginning." Mike's apartment smelled like leftover pizza and energy drinks, which was oddly comforting after the sterile perfection Ember had been cultivating in our house. He'd cleared space on his couch without asking too many questions, though I could see him practically vibrating with curiosity as I settled in with my laptop. "So," he said finally, cracking open a beer and offering me one, "wife trouble?" "Wife is having an affair with her personal trainer." Mike nearly choked on his beer. "Seriously? That's like something out of a bad movie." "Tell me about it." "What are you going to do?" I opened my laptop and pulled up the financial records I'd been compiling. "I'm going to make sure she understands exactly what she's throwing away." Over the next hour, I walked Mike through everything I'd discovered: the pattern of deception, the financial manipulation, the way Ember had gradually excluded me from her life while still expecting me to fund it. Mike listened with the focused attention he usually reserved for particularly challenging code problems. "Dude," he said when I finished, "she's been basically stealing from you for months. Not stealing, just misrepresenting the nature of our arrangement." "What's the difference?" "Stealing would be illegal. This is just marriage." Mike laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "So what's the plan? Divorce lawyer? Couples therapy? Burning her stuff on the front lawn?" "Something more creative," I said, pulling up a new browser window. "Tell me what you know about social media analytics." The next few hours were educational. Mike, it turned out, knew quite a bit about tracking online activity, and Ember had been surprisingly careless about her digital footprint. Her Instagram account, which I'd never paid much attention to, told a story of gradual transformation over the past few months. New workout photos, new restaurants, new friends I didn't recognize, and in the background of several recent photos, the same black pickup truck I'd seen at her office. "She's been documenting the affair," Mike said, scrolling through the images. "Look at this one from last week. That's definitely the same guy in 3 different photos." Dom Vega, according to his own very public Instagram profile. 28 years old, personal trainer and lifestyle coach at Elite Fitness downtown. His feed was exactly what you'd expect. Shirtless gym selfies, motivational quotes about crushing your goals, and photos of him with various clients who all seemed to be attractive women in their 30s and 40s. "This guy's running a whole operation," Mike said, clicking through Dom's photos. "Look at all these training sessions with married women. I bet half of them are paying him for more than fitness advice." I studied the photos more carefully. Dom had a pattern: expensive dinners at trendy restaurants, weekend trips to nearby cities, always with a different woman, but always the same setup. He was either very successful at his job or very successful at something else entirely. "Can you trace the financial connections?" I asked. "What do you mean?" "Ember's been spending money on things that don't show up in our joint account. Dinners, trips, probably gifts for him. That money has to be coming from somewhere." Mike cracked his knuckles like he was preparing for a particularly challenging hack. "Give me access to your banking records, and I'll see what I can find." What we found was illuminating. Ember had been using a credit card I didn't know about, one that was somehow connected to her work account. The charges painted a clear picture of a woman funding an elaborate double life, expensive restaurants, hotel rooms, even what looked like shopping trips for men's clothing and accessories. "She's been playing sugar mama to this guy," Mike said, pointing at a charge for a watch that cost more than I made in a month. "Look at the dates. Every time she told you she was working late, she was actually taking this guy out to dinner." I felt something cold and methodical settle in my chest. Not anger, exactly, but something more focused, more purposeful. "I need to see them together," I said. "What do you mean?" "I need to document this. Photos, videos, something that makes it impossible for her to deny or minimize what's been happening." Mike looked at me carefully. "Kellor, man, I get that you're hurt, but maybe you should think about whether you really want to go down this road. Once you start playing private investigator, there's no going back." She uninvited me from her birthday party because she was ashamed to have me around her friends while she paraded her boyfriend in front of them. I think we're already past the point of no return. He was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, but we do this smart. No breaking laws, no doing anything that could come back to bite you in a divorce proceeding." "Agreed. And we document everything. If this goes sideways, I want to be able to prove we didn't cross any lines." "Also agreed." Mike pulled up a map of the city on his computer. "Elite Fitness is downtown, right next to that new shopping complex. There's a parking garage across the street with a good view of the entrance. If we're going to do surveillance, that's probably our best bet." "When?" "Tomorrow's Friday. According to her Instagram, she usually posts workout photos on Friday afternoons. If she's keeping to her normal schedule, she'll probably be there around 5. I nodded, already planning the logistics. "What about equipment?" "I've got a camera with a decent zoom lens. Nothing fancy, but good enough to get clear photos from a distance." "And if they go somewhere after the gym?" "We follow at a safe distance and see what happens. But Kellor," he turned to face me directly, "you need to be prepared for what you might see. This isn't going to be easy to watch." "I know." But I didn't know. Not really. I thought I was prepared for the reality of my wife's betrayal, but I had no idea how much worse it was about to get. The next afternoon, Mike and I positioned ourselves in the parking garage across from Elite Fitness with a clear view of the entrance and the street beyond. The concrete structure hummed with distant traffic and the occasional echo of tires on ramps below us. We'd picked a spot on the 3rd level where the shadow fell just right, our car angled so it looked abandoned rather than occupied. Mike methodically laid out his gear like a professional going to work, camera assembled, lens cleaned, binoculars within reach. We synced our phones, checked signal strength, exchanged a nod. No words were needed. The plan was simple, and neither of us wanted to say more than necessary. At 4:47 p.m., Ember's car pulled into the gym's parking lot. She parked close to the entrance, stepped out, and adjusted the strap of her gym bag with a practiced ease. She was wearing workout clothes I'd never seen before. Sleek, fitted, expensive-looking athletic wear that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her posture relaxed. She looked confident, happy, like someone who was exactly where she wanted to be. My chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with anger. It was recognition. This version of her wasn't rushed or distracted or tired from work. This was someone who'd made time for herself or for someone else. At 4:52 p.m., the black pickup truck arrived. It rolled in smoothly, like it belonged there, and parked without hesitation. Dom Vega stepped out, broad shoulders filling the space between the door and the truck, movements loose and unhurried. He was exactly what I'd expected from his photos. Tall, muscular, with the kind of casual confidence that came from being young and attractive and used to getting what he wanted. He didn't scan the lot or check his phone. He just walked straight toward the entrance, already knowing she'd be there. He met Ember at the entrance to the gym, and even from across the street, I could see the way they looked at each other. It wasn't dramatic or rushed. It was familiar, comfortable, the kind of look that didn't need to hide. "Getting photos," Mike said quietly, adjusting his camera settings, the shutter clicking in controlled bursts. They disappeared into the gym, glass doors sliding shut behind them, and for the next hour, we waited. Time stretched in strange ways, each minute both dragging and vanishing too quickly. Mike passed the time by quietly narrating the activities of other gym members, who was clearly skipping leg day, who had terrible form, who was absolutely on their phone more than their workout. I barely heard him. I just sat and thought about the mathematics of betrayal. How many lies had Ember told me? How many small ones had added up to this? How many times had she looked me in the eye and invented stories about work meetings and girls' nights while she was actually planning to meet Dom? Each lie felt like a variable in an equation that only ever arrived at the same result. At 6:15 p.m., they emerged from the gym together. Ember had changed into street clothes, a dress I'd never seen before, something simple but elegant, the kind of thing that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread rather than our closet at home. Her hair was loose now, framing her face differently. They stood close together outside the entrance, bodies angled inward, and Dom's hand rested on the small of her back in a gesture that was unmistakably intimate. Not protective, possessive. "They're moving," Mike said. "Looks like they're getting in his truck." We followed them through downtown traffic, slipping easily into the flow of cars, staying far enough back to avoid detection but close enough to keep them in sight. Red lights. Turns taken without hesitation. They didn't argue about directions or glance at maps. They moved like people who'd done this before. They stopped at Meridian, one of the most expensive restaurants in the city, the kind of place Ember and I had talked about going to for special occasions but never actually visited, because it was so far outside our budget. Apparently it wasn't outside her budget when she was with Dom. Mike parked where we could see the restaurant's front windows, engine idling, the glow from inside spilling onto the sidewalk. We watched them get seated at a table with a view of the city, the skyline framed behind them like it had been arranged on purpose. Even from a distance, it was clear this wasn't their first time there. The waiter greeted them like regulars, a familiar smile, a brief exchange that ended with laughter. Dom leaned back easily in his chair, comfortable in surroundings that would have intimidated the hell out of me. "Look at her," Mike said softly. Ember was laughing at something Dom had said, leaning forward across the table with an expression of delight I hadn't seen on her face in months, maybe years. Her hands moved as she talked, animated, alive. She looked younger, lighter, like someone who was genuinely enjoying herself rather than just going through the motions of her life. "She's happy," I said, and the words tasted bitter in my mouth. "Yeah," Mike agreed. "She is." We watched them for another hour, documenting their dinner with photos and timestamps. They shared appetizers and wine, held hands across the table, behaved like people who were genuinely infatuated with each other. It wasn't just an affair, it was a relationship. When they finally left the restaurant, we followed them to a hotel downtown. Not a cheap place, but not the most expensive either. The kind of mid-range business hotel where people went when they wanted privacy but didn't want to spend a fortune on it. "That's enough," I said as they disappeared into the lobby. "I've seen what I needed to see." Mike lowered his camera and looked at me with something that might have been sympathy. "What now?" "Now I go home and wait for her to lie to me about where she's been tonight." "And then?" I thought about Ember's face in the restaurant, the way she'd looked at Dom like he was the most fascinating person she'd ever met. I thought about the money she'd spent on him, the elaborate deception she'd constructed, the casual cruelty of uninviting me from her birthday party so she could celebrate with him instead. "Then I show her what consequences look like," I said. Ember came home at 11:30 p.m. with a story about working late on a client presentation and then grabbing drinks with the team to celebrate landing a new account. She delivered this fiction with the practiced ease of someone who'd been refining it for months, complete with details about which bar they'd gone to and which co-workers had been there. I listened from the living room couch, nodding in the right places and asking follow-up questions that demonstrated I was paying attention. I even complimented her on landing the new client, because I wanted her to understand later that I'd given her every opportunity to tell me the truth. "You seem like you're in a good mood," I observed. "I am. It feels good to succeed at something, you know? To feel like I'm building something important." "I'm sure it does." She went upstairs to shower, probably washing off the scent of expensive restaurant food and hotel soap, and I sat alone with my laptop, reviewing the photos Mike had taken and the timeline we'd constructed of her evening. When she came back downstairs in her pajamas, she looked relaxed and content in a way that made my chest tight, with something that wasn't quite anger and wasn't quite sadness. "Kellor," she said, sitting down next to me on the couch. "About yesterday. About our fight." "What about it?" "I think we both said things we didn't mean. Maybe we should talk about seeing a counselor or something, working on our communication." I closed my laptop and looked at her directly. "You think our problem is communication?" "I think our problem is that we've been growing apart, and instead of dealing with it, we've been letting resentment build up until we're snapping at each other over birthday parties." "Is that what happened? We snapped at each other over a birthday party?" "You know what I mean." I did know what she meant. She was trying to reframe her affair as a symptom of our marital problems rather than the cause of them. She was trying to make this something we were both responsible for, something we could fix together if we just communicated better and tried harder. It was a reasonable approach, the kind of thing a marriage counselor might suggest. It might even have worked if I hadn't spent the evening watching her hold hands with her trainer at a restaurant she'd never mentioned wanting to visit with me. "Ember," I said carefully, Is there anything else you think I should know? Anything that might be relevant to our communication problems? She was quiet for a moment, and I could see her weighing her options. Tell me the truth and deal with the immediate consequences, or continue the deception and hope she could manage both relationships simultaneously. No, she said finally. I think we just need to make more effort to prioritize each other. Okay, I said. Let's do that. She smiled, probably thinking she'd successfully navigated a potential crisis. Really? Really. In fact, I have an idea for how we can start. What kind of idea? I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery, scrolling to the pictures Mike had taken outside the restaurant. We could begin by talking about these. The color drained from Ember's face as she looked at the images. Her and Dom at their table, holding hands, laughing together, looking like people who were very much in love. Where did you get these? I took them. Well, Mike took them, but I was there. You followed me? I followed my wife, who told me she was working late but was actually having dinner with her boyfriend at the most expensive restaurant in the city. She stared at the photos for a long time, probably trying to calculate how much I knew and how much I could prove. This isn't what it looks like. It looks like you're having an affair with your personal trainer and using money from our joint accounts to fund dates with him. We haven't used money from our joint accounts. I pulled up the credit card statements Mike had helped me trace. Elite Fitness membership, charged to the card connected to your work account. Meridian restaurant, same card. Hotel charges, same card. Should I keep going? That's my money, my work account. Money you've been hiding from me while telling me you couldn't afford to contribute more to our household expenses. She was quiet again, probably realizing that her financial deception was actually worse than the affair itself. Cheating was something that could be forgiven, worked through, overcome with enough effort and counseling. But lying about money while your spouse struggled to cover the bills was something else entirely. How long have you known? She asked. I started figuring it out when you uninvited me from your birthday party. I confirmed it yesterday when you admitted you'd been seeing him for 3 months. I documented it tonight when I watched you two play house at a restaurant I couldn't afford to take you to. Kellor, I'm sorry. I know how this must look. How it must look. Ember, I have photos of you holding hands with another man. I have financial records showing you've been lying to me about money for months. I have a paper trail of deception going back to the beginning of your relationship with him. This isn't about how it looks. This is about what it is. She started to cry then, but they weren't the tears of someone who was genuinely remorseful. They were the tears of someone who'd been caught and was looking for a way to minimize the consequences. I never meant for this to happen, she said. But it did happen, and you made choices every day for 3 months to keep it happening while lying to me about it. What do you want me to do? End it? I'll end it right now. I want you to understand that it's already over, not just your relationship with him, your relationship with me. Don't say that. We can work through this. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our neighborhood one last time. Tomorrow I'd start looking for a new place to live. Next week I'd file for divorce. By the end of the month, this house would just be a place where I used to live with someone I used to trust. Ember, I said without turning around. 3 days ago, you sent me a text message telling me not to come to your birthday party because your friends didn't want to see me. Do you remember that? Yes. That was the moment you chose him over me. Everything since then has just been me catching up to a decision you'd already made. I didn't choose him over you. It's not that simple. I turned back to face her. You're right. It's not that simple. You chose a version of yourself that doesn't include me. The successful career woman who dates younger men and eats at expensive restaurants and doesn't have to worry about joint bank accounts or mortgage payments or any of the boring realities of being married to someone like me. That's not true. Isn't it? When's the last time you looked at me the way you looked at him tonight? When's the last time you were excited to see me walk through the door? She didn't have an answer for that. I'm going to pack the rest of my things, I said. I'll be out by tomorrow night. Where will you go? That's not your problem anymore. I went upstairs and filled 2 suitcases with everything I couldn't replace, leaving behind the furniture we'd bought together and the photos of happier times and all the accumulated debris of 8 years of shared life. When I came back downstairs, Ember was sitting on the couch where I'd left her, staring at her phone. Kellor, she said as I headed for the door. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. I stopped with my hand on the doorknob and looked back at her one last time. I know you are, I said, but you're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught, and that's the difference between a mistake and a choice. I left her sitting in our living room, probably already composing the text message that would tell Dom about the photos and the confrontation and the need to be more careful in the future. I drove back to Mike's apartment through empty streets, past the restaurant where I'd watched my marriage end, and the hotel where my wife was building a new life without me. The next morning, I filed for divorce. Not because I was angry, though I was, not because I wanted revenge, though I did, but because some betrayals are so complete, so thoroughly destructive, that the only rational response is to accept the reality they create and move forward accordingly. Ember had uninvited me from her birthday party because her friends didn't want to see me, so I uninvited her from the rest of my life, closed our joint accounts one last time, and started over with the clarity that comes from finally understanding exactly where you stand. It wasn't the ending either of us had planned, but it was the ending her choices had made inevitable. And sometimes, accepting inevitability is the most powerful thing you can do. The divorce papers were served on a Tuesday, exactly 1 week after that first text message. By then, I'd already started building something new, a life that didn't require anyone's permission, a future that couldn't be canceled by someone else's betrayal, a story that was finally completely my own.